we dropped the ball. Pagkatapos ng victory natin sa Hague, dapat nirally natin yung buong mundo to uphold our interests in the West Philippine Sea, protect our fishermen, and the world was waiting for us to take charge. Ako ay si Sofia Tomacruz and I cover foreign affairs under the Duterte administration. Every president is bound by the Constitution to pursue an independent foreign policy. Yung nangyari lang, parang nagkaroon ng bagong buhay itong phrase under Duterte because he made so many eye-catching, ear-catching statements. One of him declaring an economic and military split from the US, rejecting new grants from the EU, declaring that the Philippines would move closer to China and Russia. If you were to review kung ano ba talaga yung independent foreign policy, it should be a foreign policy that protects and upholds and advances the Philippines' national interests, our territory, protects our sovereignty, and, you know, if you look at those things, just judging by those things, I throw the question back to you, you know, how far have we come from the 6 years since Duterte started his presidency? Nag-advance ba yung mga national interests natin? Has our national territory been protected? And I think while in some ways you can say that there were some advances, by and large, we haven't pursued an independent foreign policy. It might have sounded independent, but then in many ways, we were also left isolated from countries that uphold values that we're supposed to hold, we think we hold dearly, like democracy and human rights. Siguro balikan na lang natin muna yung imahen ng Pilipinas bago pumasok si Duterte sa Malacanang. We were known as the bastion of democracy in Asia, the oldest democracy in Asia. We were known as the country that stood up to China in the South China Sea. We had a vibrant, free press, you know, because he was so averse to criticism, both not only from within the Philippines, but more so if it was coming from outside the Philippines. I don't think anyone would forget when he cursed, for example, former President Barack Obama, or he called UN experts idiots, threatened to slap them, deported people who were critical against him, threatened to ban the entry of, again, people who were critical against him, and mainly in this drug war. And so in many ways, Duterte turned that on its head and really paved the way for the Philippines to slide further towards authoritarianism. Well, hindi. Unang-una dahil sa umpisa pa lang, na-downplay na niya yung biggest victory of the Philippines in the West Philippine Sea, which of course is the 2016 Hague ruling. So, final ito ng Aquino administration, and the victory came down, was handed to the Philippines under Duterte. But right off the bat, when the whole world was looking at the Philippines to see how we would handle that victory and what steps we would do next, Duterte decided to put it on the back burner, largely for economic benefits from China. And so, in the 5 years since, we've lost very valuable and crucial ground. Just look at what's happening out at sea. Nandyan pa rin yung mga bangka ng China, nandyan pa rin yung Coast Guard, nandyan pa rin yung Navy. You know, there's data even to back it up that it has only increased, no? Yung presence ng mga ships galing sa China dun sa West Philippine Sea. I think when you mention China, the first thing that comes to mind under the Duterte administration is that Duterte gifted China with warm ties. It was really a gift because this wasn't something that China, I would say, really worked for. It came almost automatically under a Duterte administration. Right at the very beginning, he decided to distance us from our traditional allies and move closer to countries like China, despite long-standing disputes like what's happening in the West Philippine Sea, largely for economic benefits. But then, if you look at where we are 6 years later, puro pledges lang to. And most of the pledges that Duterte and his team brought home during his first visit have yet to really deliver and have yet to come into fruition. And so let's see where the next administration takes it. Sobrang turbulent yung ties between the Philippines and the US over the last 6 years. We went through so many ups and downs, whether that be the recent termination, suspension, and eventual restoration of the Visiting Forces Agreement. Sa early years ng Duterte presidency, the implementation of the Enhanced Defense Cooperation Agreement was put on hold. Sobrang importanteng agreement yun dahil yun yung parang nag-operationalize din ng iba't ibang treaties between the Philippines and the US. Of course, who could forget how he cursed former President Obama and threatened to block the entry of US lawmakers who were critical of this drug war. Siguro yung pinakamalaking issue sa ties sa relasyon ng EU at yung Philippines ay nung sabi ni Duterte na you can take your money elsewhere and we'll survive. Nung dinecline niya yung aid galing sa EU dahil konektado to sa pagproprotekta ng human rights and rule of law here in the Philippines. Several times, the EU and its lawmakers warned the Philippines, kung walang improvement sa human rights situation dito sa Pilipinas, pwede mawala yung GSP plus status ng Philippines, which gives us trade perks. And luckily, that's been there. But it was largely combative between Duterte and the EU, again, because Duterte did not like being called out for his bloody drug war. We dropped the ball. Pagkatapos ng victory natin sa Hague, dapat nirally natin yung buong mundo to uphold our interests in the West Philippine Sea, protect our fishermen, and the world was waiting for us to take charge, and we decided to put the Hague ruling on the back burner and only pick it up in recent years. And so you can already see over the last 6 years how much ground has been lost, how much catch our fishermen has not been able to get, how big of a challenge they face when trying to fish in areas that are supposed to be well within the Philippines territory. So now we're trying to pick the ruling back up and trying to gain lost ground, but in a way, we're playing catch-up. Yung ASEAN, isa ito sa mga pinaka-importanteng body sa buong mundo dahil yung ASEAN, located sa Southeast Asia and the Indo-Pacific, which is one of the most important regions in the world right now, where really the rules of the international order is being written. So, yung mga bodies kagaya ng ASEAN and countries in it, like the Philippines, may responsibilidad tayo kung paano madidictate itong international order and what is tolerated, what is not tolerated. The world is looking to us to chart that path forward. Kahit yung tawag dito ay ugnayang panlabas, malapit din ito sa atin dahil yung foreign policy, it trickles back to us. Whether that be securing justice for people who would otherwise not get it here in the Philippines, kagaya ng mga victims ng drug war, for instance. The prices over oil and different commodities, food. Kung ano yung mga oportunidad na bukas para sa mga Pilipino, whether that be sa studies, work, research, that's all dictated by our foreign policy. And second, baka iniisip din ng mga tao na sobrang layo yung ugnayang panlabas. Ano ba ito sa akin bilang isang Pilipino? Hindi naman ako apektado dito. Pero yung foreign policy, ito yung nag-reveal kung ano yung mahalaga para sa isang presidente, para sa isang gobyerno. Dahil nga, diba, sa lupang hininang may ang mamatay ng dahil sa'yo. So what are you willing to die for? What are you willing to sacrifice for? What are you willing to struggle for? When we confront these questions, we figure out our place in the world and sino ba tayo bilang Pilipino.